We still didn't get a chance to finish our lesson these past couple times that I spoke. Again, it's the book of Galatians, the 5th chapter. We started at the 13th verse, but I believe we stopped the last time we spoke on this particular chapter, book, and verse. I believe we stopped at verse 16. So we're going to pick up at verse 17. But just a brief recap, book of Galatians, the 5th chapter, is a letter from our brother Shaw. We're going to use his English name, Paul. And in that, he was writing to those in Galatia, and he was writing to those who knew the word of Yahweh. And in this particular time, they were having wars among them. Now, wars not necessarily meaning they were beating each other up. Granted, probably they were. I don't know. But wars is they was having bickering and complaining and murmuring and competition amongst each other about who was better than who can teach better than who sounded better, who was a better leader, all out of the absence of Shaw, out of the absence of Paul. And Paul was writing to them, basically letting them know that we're all in this together. We're all one body. We all have the same mind frame. We're not here to have a carnal mind frame, but to have the mind frame of spirit. And in having the mind frame of spirit, we should know we all had the same things in common, so there should not be no divisions, if I could put it that way, among us. However, if we look at the history of our brother Paul writing from even Galatians to the Philippians to the Corinthians, it was always the same thing. He was always writing to them about unity, about coming together and being, if I could put it this way, remind themselves that, okay, you're different members, but yet you're a part of the same body. So this all even applies to us today, that, yeah, we may have our disagreements on certain things, but we always have to keep the root and the foundation of mind in hand, that no matter what our disagreements may be in the flesh, we're still all a part of the same body, meaning that we should never, ever, ever at any time be separated from each other. Maybe just go to our corners for a little bit to cool off. That's fine. We're in this flesh, right? So we're going to have moments when we need to cool off, but yet we should still have the time when we come back together. And that's just the bulk of it all. I may not see eye to eye all the time with Elder Cook, but guess what? At the end of the day, we're going to come back together. At the end of the day, if it's work that needs to be done in the house of prayer, I'm not going to let whatever we had as a disagreement fleshly hinder the progress of the kingdom. And that what was going on with our brothers and sisters in Galatia. They was allowing for what they had going on in their flesh to sever the work of spiritual work that they had ahead of them. And I don't know about you, what I've learned and continue to still learn, because I'm not saying I learned it as I got it, but what I've learned and continue to learn is that no matter what it is, the work of spirituality is the most important of all of our lives. That is out of all things, out of money, out of clothes, jewelry, relationships. And I don't mean relationships as a physical. I'm talking relationships as far as friendship, family, because those are relationships too. Any type of relationship you may have, this walk is more important than all of that. Sometimes it may not, it's hard, and it's hard to see it that way. But when you make it pass through, seeing it past our with our own eyes, then we're able to realize it. And that's the beauty of trials. None of us want trials. None of us want suffering. I know I don't. But the beauty of it is after it, you gain wisdom from it. That's the beauty of it. At the time, it don't feel good, and you don't see it. But if you put in your mind that, okay, it's something to learn within this, and it's something I'm going to get out of this to grow. And heck, not even just for me to grow, to be able to help others to grow. That is the purpose. So our brother here, we're going to start, like I said, we're going to pick up the 16th verse. But my topic, and still is my topic for the third time, is overcoming the flesh. And that's what they had to do, and that's what we have to do every day. Just because we overcome one obstacle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 100 obstacles, there's still more obstacles in our flesh that we have to be sure and to make sure that we continue to overcome within us. No matter how small or how big, we have to continue to fight. Verse 16 in the 5th chapter of Galatians, it says, I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you will not perform the lust of the flesh, which is, in my Bible, it says, carnal passions. So when we walk in the Spirit, meaning when we let go of our desires for carnal, worldly outward passions, then we're able to walk in the Spirit. But if we find ourselves walking in or being overwhelmed by worldly desires and passions, then we'll find ourselves walking in such. So we have to, in this manner, have to evaluate our own selves and evaluate our own minds, because in that, you only know if you're walking in the will of the Father, besides your teacher. I'll put it that way, too, because the teacher knows, too. The teacher will see things that you yourself may even deny or suppress, but the teacher will see things and point them out and not even know exactly what it may be to let us know we're not walking in the Spirit. Bishop? You have your hand up? Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sabbath school. I'm sorry. Elder Cook.
One thing that I really realized is, and I heard a lady saying the other day about how she was brought into holiness, and she said, "Do you think that I was brought in that way for you to be brought in another way?" And one thing that I really realized in the house of prayer, people think that you're grooming people for them, and we're not here to do that. We're grooming people for the work of the Father. Point blank, period. You know, you ain't got to be groomed for another people's flesh. That's simple. You can take that and control it or whatever you want to do with it. But everyone that we talk about, Paul, Elijah, all of those prophets, if they had any personal life, it was so it was so obsolete that there was nothing recorded about it, because your your fleshly life can't be mixed with the spiritual life, and then you try to make spirituality in agreement with your fleshality. There's no way you can do it, and it troubles me. None of us are perfect,
Right.
but it troubles me when we try to put it all in a pot and mix it up and treat it as if it's acceptable. It is not. Choose ye this day whom you're going to serve. And every mission that the prophets were sent on, they didn't know from one day to the next what to expect from the Father. But the yes from the beginning was the yes to the end. So, you know, and as much as we see those prophets crying and weeping and running for their lives, they yet still did the mission that was set before them. And even when the prophet got tired, they couldn't. They had to keep moving. This is a tiring journey. And you asked me the other day, do I ever have points in my journey that I go to the Father and say, you can have this? Definitely. And that's when people, this seems like they sit here, I think you said it last night, you read, you have good words come out of your mouth and everything, but you still get caught up in things that you know better.
Right.
That's the thing.
Right.
You know better. So when those things happen, for a leader, it is a distraction. And those distractions make you want to say, why are you even giving me this stuff? Along with everything else, grief and sickness and
Right.
death
Right.
and all of those things, it becomes, you know, you're not the Savior, you're a person, but you've been placed in leadership and you lead the people. You're supposed to be there for them. I don't know if pastors are there for the people now, but I am.
Right.
And I don't say that with a pat on my back. I don't want you to go down unless I cushion the fall. I don't want you to cry unless I can be there to help catch some of the tears. You know, I mean, I can't stop the tears, but I can catch some of it.
Yes, sir.
And when we do things that cause distraction, it blows everything out. Just like the scripture.
That's so true. And Bishop made two vital points that stuck out to me in his comment. One was that how people seem to think that you're shaping them to what you want them to be. And when it comes to spirituality, number one, there's no way possible you can shape somebody to what you want them to be. They have to first be willing to be shaped in what the Father wants them to be. But to the outside, it'll make them think, to those who are of the world, who have a fleshly mind, will make them think, well, you're just trying to be like everybody else or everybody that's, but in Scripture says, if the Scripture says that we're going to speak the same thing, let's be honest, we are being made alike. You know, we are being made alike. We are. We are being, yes, we're different members, but yet we're all being made alike to think the same thing. So yes, we are. But you have to be willing to want to be changed. Can't nobody assist you in changing if you don't want to be changed. That's anything. That's if somebody addicted to anything, whether it be drugs, money, sex, whatever. If you're addicted to it and don't want to change from it, no matter how much, Elder Emily, for example, wants to help me if I'm addicted to money. If I don't want to get better with my money, no matter how much she wants to help me, guess what? I'm going to do the same. I'm going to mismanage my money, right? It don't matter. But if I make a change in my mind that says, okay, I know you're good with money. Help me, I really want to change. Now, I may make some mistakes because I'm still used to it in my mind frame, but yet in me, I want to change. And that's the difference. When you want to change, yeah, you're going to make mistakes. As Bishop said, we're not human. That's very true. But when you switch your mind to where you no longer want to make that the forefront of you, that's where the change happens. That's where the change happens. But if you're comfortable with it being the forefront of who you are and really just saying, I want to change, but really in your mind, you're not trying to put that first, you're never going to change. And it doesn't happen overnight either. Got to make that clear. Nothing good for you will happen overnight. It is called a journey. It's called long suffering in the word for a reason. Because the journey is long. The suffering, it seems long, but yet you're still growing in the midst of it. And you're still learning about yourself and your journey. So that is so true. Going into the 17th verse, it says, for the lusts of the flesh are against the spirit of Yahweh, and the spirit of Yahweh is against the lust of the flesh. For the one opposes the other. So be mindful, and do not just do what? Anything you desire to do. What he's saying here, and it's made so plain, but what he's saying here, don't just get the urge to want to do something and just do it. And that's what we live in now. We live in a time of technology. Everything's fast. So since everything's fast and quick, everybody's doing what they desire to do right now. That's exactly what's happening. If I sit back, instead of me sit back and wait to see if this, and think about if this is the right move to make, everything's moving so fast, it's like, I got to do it now before I miss my opportunity. What are you going to miss? What are you going to miss? And this is talking to me. I had to think about that. What am I going to miss? Because that's where impatience comes from. Impatience comes from thinking I'm going to miss something. That's one of the keys to impatience. And I just know that for my personal stuff. That's why I have to watch myself every single day. I have to watch how I think every single day. Because if you think you're going to miss something, it makes you impatient with life. Or it makes you impatient with the Father. And the Father doesn't deal with our impatience. He's on his own moments. I don't want to say time because he don't deal in time. He's on his own moments. So when he decides to do something, really when it's already done, I just have to realize to be patient in who I am and not try to be everywhere in my mind and thinking I have really control. Because that's also a form of control. Thinking you're going to miss something is a form of control because you try to control the situation. You try to control to the point that, if I don't get this, if I don't move this and do this now, this ain't going to happen. When you think about it all, is it really that big of a deal? Most of the time, it's not. Most of the time, things that are going to happen, they're going to happen. You know, it's not saying not to care either because some people get that mixed up in the mind frame of not caring. It's not saying not to care, but it's realization and knowing what you can and cannot control. When you honestly, wholeheartedly realize that all you can control is your thoughts and what you do and what you say, then it just awakens in you that whatever happens outwardly, you really can't control it. If I get sick in my body, right, and you can get sick in your body and eat all the right things. Drink nothing but pure water, the best of water. Eat the perfect food, and you can still get sick in your body. But me getting sick in my body, should that make me upset? Should that make me angry? No, because we're all eligible to be what? Sick. Period. All of us. All of us can walk outside right now, no matter how healthy we eat, can walk outside and get a cold. It's just inevitable. It's just one of those things in life you cannot control. None of us can control. It's just that if you eat right, your immune system builds up more, which gives you a better chance of not getting sick. But it never says you won't get sick, right? It never says that. Shoot, it's people that eat healthy, right? And they're not thin, they're big. I've seen that. I've seen people eat healthy, and they're not thin, and they're big, right? But if you get upset about that, you'll never get better. You'll just remain in the mind frame of depression, being upset, instead of realizing, hey, maybe I just need to correct some things and see how things work out. See, when your mind frame changes, your body changes too. Like it all works hand in hand. It's not just only about what you eat, what you drink, but it's also about here. If this is not strong and this is not fed right, things will take you over and you will lose control. Because this is the only thing we can't control, any of us. And this is what our brother Paul is telling them. He's telling them to be what? He said to be mindful. He said to be mindful. He said be mindful because the flesh opposes the spirit and the spirit opposes the flesh. So he's saying be mindful, meaning watch, because your mind is the only thing you can control, which means if you can control your mind, you can control your desires. Now, one thing I have learned is, especially in Master Builders, Bishop taught us that thoughts think. So when thoughts thinking, that means that some thoughts are going to come up out of nowhere that you didn't bring up yourself, you didn't think about, you didn't initially say, hey, here goes a lustful thought. Nobody in the will of the Father willingly says, I want lust to pop in my mind. None of us. But somehow it just happens, right? That doesn't make you a bad person. It just really like, hey, recognize it and don't go after that desire of lust and put it back in check. That's all it is. The thought don't make you a bad thing. It's the reaction to the thought that makes it a bad thing. We put it that way. Because even our brother Paul, in one of his verses, said that he had a thorn in his flesh that he what? That he couldn't do anything about. It was always there. He had desires and stuff in his own mind that he had to fight that was always there. And he was one of the most spiritual people too. Shoot, look at Yahshua the Messiah. Him being tempted. He had thorns in his flesh too. That I guarantee you he wasn't thinking about all that, but it just happened to come. That didn't make Yahshua less than who he was. But it made him greater because he realized, oh, it's there, but it ain't about to run me. That's the key. It's not the thoughts. It's not the thoughts, because let's be honest, we all have some thoughts in here that we don't tell nobody because they are just some sick thoughts. And they come out of nowhere. They're just some dangerous thoughts. When I mean about sick, I mean, if you get angry enough, you'll think some things and be like, what? Whoa, where did that come from? That ain't me, because it ain't you. But it's that temptation of a thought that's there that I say, what about this? What? You're tripping. And you are tripping. Right? So that don't make you less than who you are. Control it. Just control it. And realize that those things are coming just to have you do think, to influence you to do differently than who you are. Verse 18 says, for if you are led by the Spirit, are you not under the law? I love that because this lets me know that they were having arguments about the law. And one thing that I've been taught is that there is no argument when it comes to the law. The law is what it is. Period, point blank. The 10 are the 10. The holy days are the holy days. Loving one another is one another. One thing I learned though about, as the scripture talks about, love your neighbor as yourself. The problem with that is people don't know how to love themselves. So if I don't know how to love myself, how am I going to love my neighbor? How am I going to love my neighbor? You know, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, if I don't know how to love myself, how am I going to give the same thing to Elder Cook or Elder Emily or Brother Zach or Brother Nick if I mistreat myself? And mistreating myself goes in many ways. It goes in how I treat myself literally in a literal form, whether it be drugs, alcohol, verbal abuse, what I allow myself to be in. That's a form of how you treat yourself. But if I treat myself with love, care, gentleness, compassion, patience is very important. We talk about patience with others, but you got to have patience with yourself. On this journey, you have to have patience with yourself because you're going to mess up. Mark my words. You're going to mess up. You're going to make your leader angry. It's bound to happen. I'm just going to let you know that now. Not intentionally, but you're going to do something, and you're going to make your leader upset. But the beauty of it is that's learning. It's not saying, oh, yeah, I made Bishop upset. No, it ain't that. It's that when you do, you're like, dang, you feel away, but then you realize, what could I have done better? Or what did I allow to creep in that I wasn't aware of? You see, it's just changing the mind frame. Ain't that right, Brother Nick? What you got to do, change the mind frame? Yeah. What about Brother Zach? Yeah. See, change the mind frame. Even in school, right? Amongst friends, right? You got to change the mind frame, right? Because if you don't change your mind frame, those who you're around will influence you instead of you influencing them, right? That's you be who you are at all times. That's walking by the Spirit. Walking by the Spirit is not being influenced by those around, but is you being the influencer of those around. That's why the scripture says that we're in this world, but we're not of this world. The problem is when people go out, it's not the problem that they went in the world, it's the problem that they became of the world. That's the problem, because all of us in here have no choice. We got, at the end of the day, after this beautiful word, beautiful communion, baptism, feast, what we all got to do, back in the world we go. We can't stay here all day. At all. I mean, you could, but unless you want to live like a hermit, what it was called, a hermit. If you want to live like a hermit, that's possible too, man. But unless you don't want nothing, that's on you. But typically, you're going to go back to your jobs and get some money and live stable. Yes, sir, Brother Nick.
When you said about you gotta taste the mind flame, you need to taste the mind flame so you gotta treat other people how you want to be treated.
Exactly. You change your mind frame, you'll treat people totally different. Because then you'll realize, hey, I feel good. And when you feel good about yourself, guess what? You're going to want others to feel good about themselves. You see? But when you're not feeling good about yourself, you're not going to want others to feel good about themselves. Okay? So, yeah, change your mind frame. So perfect. Verse 19 says, for the works of the flesh are obvious, which are these. And that's what I love about our brother Paul. He said they're obvious. Basically, it's something you already know. He wouldn't say the works of the flesh are obvious to people who didn't know. He would not have said that. If it's somebody in the world, he wouldn't go like, hey, it's obvious. Look at what you're doing, because they're doing it. So they're not going to be like, obvious, like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. But the Galatians, they knew. They knew what Paul was talking about. So he was like, look, they're obvious. He's writing this letter. I could picture him writing this letter right now like, look, I'm tired of this. Like, it's obvious, but I'm going to tell y'all again what the works of the flesh are, just in case you forgot. And that's the reason why we read the word, too, because sometimes we have a little amnesia. We have a little amnesia. And what amnesia is when you forget. You tend to forget. So in that's why we got to read the word, because our flesh likes to have us to forget some things that we already know that are obvious to us. So the obvious things of the flesh are adultery. Adultery, as we know it, is not just stepping outside of a physical marriage, but it's stepping outside of your spiritual marriage that you have between you and the Father, which also comes between you and leadership. That's a marriage. When you step outside of this foundation, it's stepping outside in adultery. When you step outside of what you've been taught, because when you take that chair and you say, this is what I want, this is what I will pursue, and this is what I will accomplish, that is your vow as in a marriage. You become one with that. But when you step out and do something else, that's when it becomes adultery. Next is fornication. And fornication is different than adultery, because fornication, you don't have to be married. Fornication is you going around doing whatever you want to do with no type of commitment at all, which none of us should do anyway. So this is even letting those know who know about the word but haven't taken the chair, taken the vow. If you know something that's wrong and you continue to do it, that's fornication. Because there's a difference between taking the vow. Okay, maybe you didn't take the chair, take the vow, but you continue to keep coming and keep getting the word and you're learning. If you're learning, I've been taught if you know better, you're held accountable to do better. And I totally agree. If you don't know, how can you be held accountable to something you don't know? And the Father doesn't punish us for something that we don't know. He doesn't chastise us for something he don't know. Matter of fact, he just guides us through and say, nah, that's not it. He'll send somebody like, nah, that's not it. Let me help you. But when you know, and you continue to do wrong and continue to go outside the will of the Father, that's when we start to bring what's called judgment upon us. And that's where judgment comes upon. That's where I think people get it twisted when it comes to judgment, because, you see stuff on social media and people talking like, I don't want to, I serve as they put a God of love and all that stuff. And they forget judgment. They be like, oh, I don't want to do no quote-unquote God of judgment. But they forget to realize if you're a good parent and your child continue to do something wrong under your roof, I mean, some don't, so maybe they don't. I can't talk. But a good parent is going to bring judgment upon that child. Judgment upon that child is either discipline by punishment or discipline by a whooping, right? Or maybe other forms, however they do it, as long as it's not abuse and the Father doesn't abuse us. It's said that he don't give us more than we can bear, and that's even in our judgments. People don't realize that. So when it comes upon us hard, it's because we've been going hard. That's how I look at it. When the judgment comes upon you hard, you must have been going hard sometimes, outside of a trial. A trial comes hard also on us, but that's because we're going to different levels and different states of mind. So we know, I put it that way, sometimes it's hard to separate the two sometimes, but if you're doing the will of the Father, if it's of judgment or if it's of a test for progression to the next level. And I don't know about you. I'd rather have a test, a progression in levels than something that I know I did wrong that I'm getting kicked in the butt about because of something I did. So adultery, fornication, uncleanliness. Uncleanliness is anything, it's basically self-explanatory, anything that you're doing that is not clean and not pure, which is anything that is outside of the will of the Father. So uncleanliness, a form of uncleanness is pride. Pride is unclean. Pride is very unclean because pride is selfish. Selfish is a form of uncleanliness because you don't care about nobody else but oneself. That's not clean. A clean person cares about those around and even those they come in contact with, whether they know or don't know. Cleanliness, pure thought. Lasciviousness, that's a tongue twister. But that is coming against one another, being facetious, being mean, evil. God worship, which is the worship of Elohim. So God worship is worshiping anything outside of the will of the Father. Now, God worship comes in many shapes, forms, and fashions. There's God, speaking of fashion, there's God of fashion, God of shoes, God of clothes, God of money, God of jewelry, God of gaming, God of sex, God of, whatever you can think of. That's a God. God of internet now, Back then they had internet, but hey, we got the internet now, God of internet. God of media. Media is a God, right? Even though we call it social media, media in general is media. When you depend on nothing but media, that's why we got to be careful of social media or media in general, because if we're not careful, it becomes our God. That's why I say there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying not to watch the news. I'm not saying to not scroll your social media if that's what you want to do. But when it's something that becomes addictive, that you have to have it, it becomes your God. If I have to continue to watch the news, to feel like I'm going to miss out on something, it becomes your God. Because then I no longer depend on the Father. I depend on what they're feeding me, which is not always true. You see what I'm saying? If I'm depending on somebody that I don't know if you're telling me it's the full truth or not, I'll start to lose faith in the one that I know that gives me nothing but source of truth. So we got to be very careful. Like I said, and I'm not saying not to watch the media or social media. Just be cautious and don't get absorbed or self-absorbed about it, because that also affects your mind. Traumatically, it affects your mind. Seriously. You'll be walking around here paranoid about something that's not even true and thinking that it's true. It says sorcery. Sorcery, that's a bad word there, because sorcery is done in many shapes, forms, and fashions. Sorcery, how can I use this? Sorcery can be done with words. Sorcery can be done with things. Sorcery can be done through people. Sorcery is basically trying to use things to your advantage to get what you want, but not in the right way. It could be used to hurt people. It could be used to take from people. The thing about sorcery that makes it so bad is, as we stated earlier, you reap what you sow. So if I do something in order to get back at somebody, eventually I'm at to reap that from wherever way it comes from. Whatever you do in the form of sorcery, which is the form of negativity, how can I put this in the right words? I had it. Whatever you do in the form of sorcery, which is the form of negativity, you have to realize it always requires something of you. There we go. It always requires something of you. Always. So whenever you give into sorcery, whether it be in words, whether it be if you're using some type of voodoo is sorcery, astrology is sorcery. So you have people wearing their astrology like this is going to happen for me today, and they believe it. That's sorcery, because that's not in the will of the Father. Yes, the Father gave us the stars, the moon, and all that good stuff, but he only gave us that to align with his feast days. Because back in those times, think about it, there were no watches, there were no technology. They had to literally go off the elements, right? That's why you don't hear no Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because the gods were not set up to days at this point. They were literally just days of the week. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. They was literally days of the week. I can't say they were weeks. They were just days that they counted. There wasn't no Monday. There was no Tuesday. There was no February, because at this time, the Romans and all of them did not rule over to the point that they set up names of God. So we have to know the history of these things. Yes, we say them now, knowing that the names are what they are. However, we say them now in knowing that in this time we have to use it to relay message in the worldly manner. Again, in this world, but not of this world. See? We're in this world, meaning we'll be foolish to go to a job interview and be like, I'm coming on the 6th day. They'll be like, what the heck you mean by that? You see what I mean? What the heck you coming in on 6th day? What does that mean? You got to say, I'll come in on Friday, because that's being in this world. That's what they understand. You have to speak their language sometimes. That's just wisdom. It's not saying you bow down to the God of Friday. You're not bowing down to, or Wednesday, which is Thor's father. Thor's father, Wednesday. That's crazy, right? It's crazy when you think of how these things are set up, how Wednesday is, what's Thor's father's name? But y'all know what I'm talking about. Odin, there we go. Odin is Wednesday. I learned that from a show. It's crazy. So when you call Wednesday, you're calling on Odin. It's nuts. It's nuts. It shows how manipulative the world is. Because you'll just say, oh, it's just named Wednesday, but not realizing that's a also known as moment, also known as Odin. That's like calling me Keno, but also known as Elder Scott. I'm the same person. It's just some people know me as Keno, but I'm still Elder Scott. That don't change me from who I am. You see what I mean? You still, somebody in the street say, hey, Keno, how you doing? I'm going to answer, because that's still me. I may not act the same way, but that's still me. You see what I mean? So the world is very tricky. And that's how they try to get you. So sorcery, hatred. Hatred's a powerful one, because hatred is not something that you say out that you are. Hatred is something that dwells here. That's why he put hatred there. Hatred is something that's there, and it builds, 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 and it builds until it's done building. And what I mean by that is, exactly, you explode. That's why hatred is so dangerous. So dangerous. That's why you hear about fatal stuff that happens on the news, and you be like, dang, that was from years ago. It's because they hated the person. So somebody who hates the person, they don't outright just let it happen. They think on it. For real, they sit and they harbor in the hate for the person until at the proper time, they let it happen. That's why we have to be very careful that we don't hate. And when them angry moments or our anger don't turn into hate. Because the word tells us we have the right to be angry. And we do. We're going to be angry. It's facts. You in the flesh, you're going to be angry about something, but don't let it linger to the point that it becomes hatred. Because when it becomes hatred, then it becomes very destructive. Because hate doesn't do nothing but destroy. It doesn't build. It doesn't give. It takes. And it seeks to take. That's the thing about hatred. It don't have no other avenue. The whole goal of hatred is to take whatever. And hate doesn't care about who's around either. Because when somebody hates something in particular, they blind. They don't care about who's good around them. Think about it. They don't care about who's a good person around them. They just go. And when they go, they go. So we don't want to be hate. We don't want to have hatred up here. because it's really, once you have it, there's no control over it. It really becomes your God. Brother Nick.
When I was on the highway with my mom, I saw a car accident, and I was like, God, you blessed me. And it was so bad because the back of the car wasn't keeping the, so I was going to say that with
Oh, yes, you should bless those because we want to make sure they're safe. See, that's not hatred. That's love, right? You don't know who the person is or what it is, but you just want everybody to be okay. That's love, see? But hatred doesn't care about that. They'll say, I hope you're dead. That's hate, though. For real, that's hate. That's why we have to be careful. And most of the time, hatred doesn't come from those you don't know. Hatred usually comes from the ones that are around you the most. To be perfectly honest. The ones who usually hate are the ones who are around you the most. Because think about it, if I'm not around you and I'm not with you, what do I have to hate? If I don't see you, if I don't know who you are, what do I have to hate? But hatred usually comes from within when those who you're around or you commune with. I'm not saying be paranoid, but that, unfortunately, that's how it goes. It's somebody you've came in contact with or been in contact with some type of common ground. Hate doesn't just come out of the blue unless they're just evil. And there are evil people in the world, unfortunately. There are evil people. It just is what it is. Inwardly, we're all good. But sometimes people don't care about the inward. They only care about them, which hatred goes right in the line of selfishness. You see how the things that are negative work hand in hand, just like things that are spiritual work hand in hand? When you talked about adultery, God worship, those all attribute to hatred too. God worship is hatred. It's hatred towards the Father. So you can't tell me God worship ain't hatred. Because when you God worship, you say, hey, I hate the Father. Because I trust in them more than I trust in you. Because he told me that there is no in between. Contentions are disagreements, but strong disagreements. So we have to be very careful of contentions amongst each other. Like I said, we may have times that we don't agree, but as Bishop put it, and it's very true, you go to your corner, you calm down, but at the end of the day, we come back together for the mission and not fake, because that's what people who are full of hatred do too. They're good with putting up facades and being fake, meaning that I can go to my corner and act like I'm cool when we come back together, but in here, I still can't stand you. And if I still can't stand you here, it doesn't matter how much we come back together. Eventually, it's going to come out, and I'm going to eventually react on that. Evil jealousies. Now, I thought about that. It didn't just say jealousies. It said evil jealousies. This is more and deeper than just being jealous of somebody that has something that you want. But this goes to the point that I just can't stand you for having it. Not that you have it and dang, I would like that. I like that suit that the Jones got on. Man, I wish I had that. I wish I had something just like you got. But it goes deeper than that. It goes, I can't stand him. Every time he come in with something that I like, I can't stand that. Boy, somebody, one day, I swear. Like, it turns into something deeper, and jealousies turn into envy. And envy's one that's going to be next as well. Rage. Rage is one that is very hard and uncontrollable. Rage is the same as anger, but anger and rage, I really don't put those on the same page, because even in our word here in the book of Yahweh, it says anger. But rage is more extreme than anger. Because, again, the word says that anger but sin not. When I'm in rage, when you're in rage, you're not thinking about not sinning. You're going to do what you feel like doing, because rage is dang near uncontrollable. Unless you have somebody, rage is to the point, I'll put it this way, rage is to the point that if you don't have nobody around you with some type of clear head or clear mind to calm you down, you won't be calmed down. That's how rage works. Rage, you have to have somebody around you, because when you're in a rage mode, you're there. You have to have somebody that will get your ear to calm you down. That's rage. Anger, on the other hand, the same thing, but at least in anger, if you're in the will of the Father, you can simmer that down. Sister Alicia?
You said what I was going to say, that rage is uncontrollable. It's when you completely lost. You know, there's no, you can't calm yourself or no one else can calm you, and it just goes to basically it just dies out. You know, but anger is bad, but it can be controlled.
It's very true. Exactly. Anger is bad. Like, it's a negative thing. But the thing, and that's the beautiful thing about learning the word and being taught. You learn the levels of stuff. You learn that anger is there as a sign to let you know, hold on, I need to chill before it goes into another level. Because rage is another level that is beyond anger. As you said it perfectly, it's basically uncontrollable until you said it, until it dies down. But the thing about rage is, how is it going to die down? You see what I mean? When rage happens, you don't know what the die down moment or point's going to be. You see, you don't know. You don't know what that's going to take. So we have to be very careful of the rage. Selfish ambitions. Whoa, ambitions enough are bad. Or I should say not bad, but dangerous. Ambitions are dangerous. I don't want to say they're bad, they're dangerous, because ambitions, in their nutshell, really, it becomes selfish after a while. It does, because typically ambitions only come from what you want. But when it becomes a selfish ambition, that means you only seek to do what you want, however you want, and accomplish it whichever way you want, no matter who you hurt, no matter who you forget about. And what I give a good example of that, a really good example of that. I think about the testimonies or the examples Bishop give about those who come under the teachings and then they leave to try to go start their own thing. That's selfish ambition. When you come up under a tutelage and leadership such as this, and you seek to want to go start your own thing without the proper protocol or without the proper training, because I want to be honest with you, just because you get the word here doesn't mean you've been trained to go lead. You know, you got to do the proper things, because there's some things that we think we know. We may know some, but there's a lot that we still have to learn, if that is the calling that's been put on our lives. But most people don't. So it's a selfish ambition. So what they do is they think they got it. They go out there and realize they don't have it, and then they're like somebody stuck in the middle of the sea. Anybody saw the movie Castaway? Castaway, anybody? It's got Tom Hanks in it, and he got that with volleyball. Exactly. Yeah, you be like that. You be out there with Tom Hanks with that volleyball. I forgot his name. I forgot his name, but he had a name for the volleyball because he's by himself. Basically, he had nobody. Now, in that movie, you know, he had no choice. But we have a choice. We could be out there stuck with a volleyball meaning nothing, making friends out of nothing that can't give us anything, just to try to stay sane, where we could just stay where we was at and continue to grow. And if that was the will of the Father, then went gently. Because that's the thing about the Father. When you don't try to force nothing, it just happens. It just happens. That's all I can say. You don't have to force it. It just happens. Yeah, sister?
I was going to say you did, because I had a question, answer my question, but my question was, can ambition become a God? But you answered that.
That's a good question, though. And you're right. It can. It can. That's a really good question. Ambition is a God. Perfect. Because ambition is another thing that blinds us. Us. I will say us. Because depending on what we may want, we can become ambition about it, meaning we become and have what's called tunnel vision. And when you have tunnel vision, that means you don't see nothing to your left. Your right, my bad, is y'all left, but my right. And then, or the left. You don't see nothing but what you want. The dangerous thing about that is you don't see nothing to your right. No, you don't see nothing to your left, meaning that you can have a brother or sister there like, hey, I know you want that, but you got Bishop say, hey, I know you want that, but you're so stuck in what you want, you're not hearing them, right? So definitely ambition, I would say ambition and pride, another one, they stem from each other. So much stuff stems from pride. But ambition, I would say, is another stem from pride as well, because it becomes a self-centered thing where it becomes a God, only about you. And basically, you make what you want, which becomes you, the God. no matter what I gotta do to get it, I'm gonna get it. Elder?
It's a beautiful lesson. I think a lot of the words, like you said, ambition. People in the world that say, you should have some ambition, because then you'll go and you'll be able to, you'll have some drive to accomplish the things you need to, which on the fleshly side might sound like a good thing, but when it comes to our spirit man, if we're so focused on the ambition of the flesh, we won't have any ambition for the will of the Father, because we're so task focused on what, oh, I need to do this, or I need to save this, or I need to go and set this up, or I need to go and accomplish this, that if the Spirit tells you to give from your abundance that you have, you won't, because you're so ambitious with what you want. So I mean, even to like having pride or having a security and sureness, is pride can be good if it's not in yourself. If you have surety in the will of the Father, and you have pride in your stand, you're grateful for your stand, you're glad that you're a part of it, then that's also a form of pride. But it becomes bad when it's like, oh, I can preach, or I teach this, and I teach better than them, or I can do this, or I can do that. Then that pride becomes totally of the flesh. And all of our like gratefulness and security in the will period has to be through the will of the Father. If it's not through the will of the Father, it's in pride, it's in ambition, it's in selfishness. So we have to really do our checks and balances, as they say, and really see where our motivations are.
So true. We all have to, every day, because it can be so easy to get tangled up in things and thinking that we're doing it the right way or doing it the righteous way, and before we know it, we're doing it totally off track. It's very easy to do, and time has got in ahead of us once again, but it's okay. There will be a part 4 one day down this line, and we're going to get through this as a unit. As of right now, we're going to put a pin right here on the 20th verse of the 5th chapter of Galatians. And just as always, we're just talking about overcoming the flesh, just things that we ourselves have to make sure that these are things that are within all of us. All of us. Some things are in us greater than others. Some people may have not too much of a thing with contentions or evil jealousies, and some may not. It's okay. At the end of the day, these are just some things that we have to look within that's happening within our flesh, even right now, and be honest. That's the thing about it. We have to be honest with ourselves. That's why something that Bishop told me to do a while back, and I just started doing probably like some months ago, maybe about 6 months to a year ago, and that's writing in a journal. Because at the end of the day, you have to put down the truth about yourself on paper and write it, and face yourself, like in whole honesty. If you face yourself in whole honesty, you'll be surprised at the changes that you're able to actually make to be able to grow in the Father. But if you just avoid the truth about yourself and just suppress it, it's not going to do nothing but continue to lead you in a path that you no longer want to be on, and you're stuck there. So there be no more questions and or comments. The cash app should be on the screen. Continue to bless this kingdom as we continue to go higher and higher as one body and one unit within this holy kingdom. Look forward to seeing everybody back. We're going to say probably about 10 or 15 minutes after 12 to be on the safe side, maybe 20. But we'll be back for sure a little after 12 as we get ready for a powerful word and a powerful service that is going to come forth from none other than our very own leader, the Honorable Senior Bishop, Dr. Herman H. Davis. Love you all. See you all shortly, and shalom.